Hey YouTube, the Great League starts back up tomorrow, and what I'm going to do in this video is we have a new meta. We got sort of even update rankings because you can see Clodsires 1 and 2 with different movesets. What we're going to do in this video is we're going to go over budget-friendly options that I think are very, very strong in this meta because, again, not everyone has these top Pokemon, not everyone has XLs. So my criteria was this when I was thinking through this. Not ranked in the top 10, no legendary, no Pokemon with Community Day moves, no XL Pokemon, and no Pokemon like Pangoro where you need to like trade it to get to it. So those are my sort of criteria for it, and has to be like good against the meta, right? So before we start with that, what is the meta? Well, you can just say it's either anything in the top 10 here. I also just looked at the top Pokemon from the first regional, and not surprising, some of these Pokemon that you see on here, right? You got your Clodsires for alligators, Azumarils, Mandibuzz, like Gastrodon, Malamar. These are all top 10 ranked Pokemon. Then you get a little off board a bit with like the Dugong, Dunsparce, I think are very good safe swaps. Talonflame, you know, as your flyer to deal with all these new ground Pokemon. And same thing with Jumpluff to deal with sort of like, we kind of need some grass and the flying, so it combos that. And then superiors are always strong, right? So that's what it was. So I was looking at this list and I'm like, okay, where are things on this list that I think are just going to be very strong that don't fit any criteria? So number one that I'm going to talk about is already here. The second most used Pokemon is Dunsparce. So why? And you're going to get this with also my second Pokemon that I talk about. Dunsparce only has one weakness, and it is fighting. And you saw right here in the list here, there are no fighters in this meta. And in fact, if you go to Pokemon that have a fighting typing, Pangoro, which again, you need to trade to get to it. And then you go down to Machamp, which I think is still overrated, but also Legacy Karate Chop, Legacy Stone Edge. Gallade, which has the fighting move Close Combat, but it is half Psychic as well. And then you're getting down to like kind of again, Machoke with a Legacy move. Hackmo, which acts more as a dragon and then has a little bit of brick break. Chestnut, which I said was one of my underrated Pokemon. I won't talk about it today. You can also go look at my overrated, underrated Pokemon. I talked about Chestnut being an underrated Pokemon. Has a Community Day move though, so I'm not going to cover it today. And then you're down into like, honestly, rank 109 at Primate, but it also has Legacy Karate Chop, right? And then you get some of your counter users like Medi 122 and Poliwrath at 161. So there's not a lot of fighting in this meta this season, which is why normal typings or other typings weak to fighting are going to roam sort of free. So right off the bat, you have someone says stop just calling it stat product and call it distribution of stat product. So it's a good distribution of stat product, low attack. Defense is not huge, but great stamina for 2100 overall. You got that buffed rollout. Now it was always a fast charging move, now doing way more damage. And you have what makes Dunsparce so strong is just this coverage, right? You have ground for steals, all these poison Pokemons that got buffed, and you still have the rock slide for flyers like Mandibuzz, and we saw Talonflame on that list there, right? So it just provides you a lot of coverage. Very, very spammy. Only has one weakness in fighting, which again, there is not a lot of fighters. When you put it in PV Poke and just look at the matchups, it's so funny because you use this thing as a safe swap. And even in the the 1 shield, 0 energy advantage scenario, you still have a 23-16 record with a 513 overall. Like that is a very, very, very strong record and a very strong average for how you wouldn't even use this Pokemon. You use this Pokemon as a safe swap, ideally, right? So when you put it that one rollout advantage on, you pick up a couple more wins and a lot more average, right? So it's a very, very just safe, dependable Pokemon, and I think it gets that bump because there is no real fighting in the meta. So I'm going to jump down to 28 here. Kind of fits the bill, a little trickier because there is ground, but that is AC and Slash. And notice people may be thinking Shadow Claw is a legacy move. It's not running Shadow Claw, it's running Powder Snow. So we'll go over the stat product and everything and why I think there's a real place for AC and Slash in this meta. The first thing is stat product, same thing. It has a really, really balanced sort of attack, defense, and stamina here. 116 attack, so it still hits pretty decently, but 132 defense and 124 stamina doesn't put you in like the glass cannon range. 1900 overall. I mean, not a glass cannon because you're 116 attack, but like you can take some moves with the 132 defense, 124 stamina. So you don't really need to be worried about taking it out right away. Now, Sandslash, A Sandslash, a lot of people had a love-hate with this thing last season because it had three weaknesses. But one of them was a double weakness to fighting. And last year, with counter users, Medi, Poliwrath, Annihilate, Defense Deoxys, list goes on and on. It was tough to run this. You always had to run this with 2 fighting counters, right? But again, I just talked about Dunspars. There is not a lot of fighting right now in this meta. Fire and ground, again, there is some fire. A Marowak, Skeldurge a little bit, and then Talonflame. Again, if you can still kind of build around that, right? Just cover maybe a safe swap. I mean, you wouldn't safe swap Dunsparce because then you're double weak to fighting, but like a safe swap thing kind of deal with that for Alligator or something. And then something in the back thing can deal with that, right? So you have like a safe swap and a second answer in the back. And ground got buffed. However, ground is also weak to ice. And notice the Powder Snow fast move. So for those of you who do not know, Powder Snow and Shadow Claw have the same energy per turn and damage per turn, even with same type attack bonus on the Powder Snow. So why was everyone using Shadow Claw back in the day? Everyone was using Shadow Claw back in the day because there were a lot more steals around, and there was a lot more things that Shadow Claw did super effective to, like because Medi was everywhere, Annihilate was everywhere, right? So you just wanted that Shadow Claw to do super effective against that. But now there's less of those Pokemon, and there's a lot more ground and flyer combo, right? And so and some grass trying to look for core breakers, right? Just take a look at this list here. If you have Powder Snow, you hit super effective against Clodsire, Mandibuzz, Superior, Diggersby, and double super effective against Jumpluff, right? So you just hit super effective, whatever, that 5-6 Pokemon on this list that you just hit super effective against. So Powder Snow, like, I think there should be a rise in an ice type Pokemon, and I was kind of looking for what is that ice type Pokemon. I think it's probably a Sandslash because you do have that secondary steel typing. You pick up a lot of resistances with the ice, right? Double resist poison, double resist ice, single resist psychic, normal, grass, flying, fairy, dragon, and bug, right? Tons of resistances. I still think given this meta, you may see some dragons coming out, right? There's no real fairies on this top one, so you may see more dragons coming out, which ice will do super effective against the dragons, super against the grass, super effective against ground, super effective against flyers. Jeez, tongue twister here. So I think it's a good Pokemon. As you can see, you got your Azumarill, Mandibuzz, suggested teammates, Azumarill, Mandibuzz as your tanky Pokemon. Gastron's got some tank too. And then you have for Alligator, like I said, kind of as a safe swap to deal with those fires. So I think that it's kind of fits 2 bills because Steel has also kind of disappeared in this meta, right? Bastion did get nerfed, so it's still around, but it got nerfed. Registeel with the Zap Cannon got nerfed. A couple seasons ago, the Break and Swipe got nerfed on Steelix, so not many people are using that because now you're just running Psychic Fangs Wrench. Skarmory with Steel Wing got nerfed. Galarian Stunfisk with Rock Slide got nerfed, and now you're down to like Togedemaru and Ferrothorn. So there's not a ton of steel, and so between that and the ice, Aurorus, again, I think Aurorus is overrated. I hate using it. The typing does not work well in this meta with that secondary rock typing. And then, Walreins, I think Walreins got some play this time around too, because again, and Dugong's always has play, but I'm not going to cover Dugong because Ice Shard, Icy Wind, double legacy. So and same thing with Walrein. I said I was not going to cover it. Powder Snow, Icicle Spear, double legacy, right? So if you want something that kind of covers your ice and covers the steel piece that we're missing that also does not have any legacy moves right now and no XL, a Sandslash is a kind of a nice sneaky one to use. Let's see. I said I did not want to do... I said I didn't want to do... So I'm trying to figure out which dragon I want to pull out here. I will say right now, and it's tough to get because I think you need to trade or you need to catch one of the special ones. I think Guzzlord is the best dragon. That Brutal Swing buff made this thing so much stronger because before you had to go to the Crunch, which is 45 energy for 84 damage, 1.87. But now getting to the Brutal Swing one move faster and doing a slightly more damage, again, less damage, but slightly more damage for energy, given your insane stamina that you have here, really, really strong Pokemon. So if I was going to say, go with Guzzlord for Dragon, like it kind of goes against what I just said. That being said, you know, Goodra, obviously, but has Thunder Punch. I like Shadow Dragonair. It's a Shadow. Zweilous, I guess, kind of fits the bill that Guzzlord fills without having a legacy move. I kind of like its dark typing on this. Again, I'm not as worried about fighting anymore in this meta. There's still a bunch of other weaknesses you got to worry about. Fairy, Bug, Ice. I said Ice. There's not a lot of Ice running around right now. So, and to double resist the Psychic and then single resist all these other things, I think, again, I would use Guzzlord. Spoiler alert. But if you're not using Guzzlord, I think a good budget option is Zweilous as a Dragon. It is 120 attack. Defense not super great, but 140 stamina. So the overall stat product's not where you want to be, and that's why I would much prefer Guzzlord. But as a budget option, this is kind of fits the same bill, same weaknesses, has that heavy Dragon Breath pressure. Body Slam did get nerfed. That's the only sort of drawback to this Pokemon. Body Slam got nerfed, so a lot of time you're probably still going to want to throw the Dark Pulse. But again, I think there's a place for it in this meta, given the current state of the top 12 Pokemon used at the Baltimore Regional and what I think is meta in the thing, right? So you have Feraligatr with a Ghost type fast move. You have Mandibuzz with obviously Dark, they can only throw flying. You have a couple grass coming out to try and answer all these waters. You have like Gastrodon and Feraligatr and Azumarill. So you have these grass starting to come out here. And again, no real fairies in the top, no fighting in the top. So I think there is going to be a place for, and again, Dugong right now is the only ice in the top. There, I think, well, Azumarill is a fairy. Sorry, I said no fairies. Azumarill is a fairy. So between Azumarill and Dugong, like those are going to be some of your toughest answers. But even with Dugong, you can chip a lot with the Dragon. That's the thing. And this is why I like Guzzlord and Dugong. These Dragon Breath users just hit so hard. And it really does add up, these Dragon Breaths. And you can kind of like shield and stuff. So 4.8 damage per turn. And a one-turn move here, right? So it's just really, really spammy. Again, Body Slam nerf hurts here. But I would do that. Now, Arctibax is better. However, I don't know how accessible Arctibax is. Quite honestly, I've caught like 6 Frigbacks or whatever the one in the wild / eggs are. This is just the first evolution. So second level, I call it. It gets the bump of same thing. Dragon Ice. I think that if you're looking for an ice type Pokemon, I think this also fits the bill. Plus the Dragon Pokemon, that there's not a lot out there right now for it. In terms of typing weaknesses and resistances, it has more weaknesses than resistances, and some of the weaknesses are out there. Not a lot though, quite honestly. Dragon, Fighting, Rock, Steel. Not as many. Steel got nerfed. Rock, there's only a few Pokemon they need to watch out for as Rock. So I think Arctibax is quite strong. Again, for the purpose of this video, Zweilous I think is going to be strong. For the purpose of if you actually just have more accessibility, Guzzlord and Arctibax I think are 2 strong Pokemon. And same thing, Goodra with Community Day move I think is pretty strong too. Like a Dragon should rise up in this ranking here in my opinion. I was going to say Marowak, but I think the Shadow's better, and I'm trying to not make it Shadow dependent because I know that is also sort of a kind of a cop-out. Rapion, again, I use the Shadow. I can kind of speak to the non-Shadow as well. It's ranked 37. I think this thing is super, super strong. It has, in my opinion, become one of the best safe swaps in Great League and Ultra League. If you looked at my overrated, underrated, I had it underrated probably in Great League first time around, and I said I probably would have done underrated in Ultra League, but it's ranked like number 2 safe swap in like a top 20 Pokemon. So I couldn't really go underrated there, but I think it's so, so strong. And again, you don't need any legacy moves for this. You don't need Excel. You benefit from a buffed, already fast charging Poison Sting that now hits a little harder. And basically 3 moves for options: Aqua Tail, Crunch, Sludge Bomb. This one's probably running, oh no, it's running Aqua Tail, Crunch as well. Just the spamminess of this thing, right? Being able to throw an Aqua Tail at 4 and a Crunch at 5 is really, really strong. And it does cover so much of this top meta that I just kind of went over, right? Because you have, it's saying run Aqua Tail for Clodsire. Clodsire is going to be tough if it has, because it resists the poison. So that's not too much. I'm not going to talk about that, but like it resists this Shadow Claw on for Alligator. If you are running against a Zoom Roll, maybe Sludge Bomb would be better because you can hit it, but Poison Sting is at least super effective. You hit super effective against the grass with your poison moves, and you resist grass because the poison resists the grass. For against Malamar, you resist the dark because you're dark. Again, you can have Aqua Tail for Diggersby would hurt as well, but you have Aqua Tail to cover for some covers there, and it's just so spammy. So I think that Rapion is another one that fits the bill that I really like of distribution, stat product, decent. Like it feels a little glossy. 136 attack, 1 defense, 117 stamina. Feels a little glossy, but as a non-shadow, you can definitely take moves that the shadow I would feel like, oh, this is going to be close to taking me out sort of thing. So you could take moves as a non-shadow and you still have that spam to go with it. And the thing about the shadow versus non-shadow is I know that shadow's ranked higher, and I think rightfully so, because sometimes it'll put it like just 2 crunch range as opposed to maybe like 2 crunch and Aqua Tail. But given the spam of this thing, being able to take some more moves and still outputting a good amount of damage with your spam, I think it makes it still very strong. And again, typing only one weakness, 5 resistances. So just in terms of like weaknesses, resistance, it is great. Unfortunately, that weakness is ground. Ground got super buffed this season, right? Except for the Mudshot that got nerfed, ground in general got buffed across the board. So there is a lot more ground right now. So a little weary of that. But got some nice resistances on there whenever you can see that. Ghost, Dark resistance, I always like to see that. So I think Rapion is, again, one that fits the bill there. Is there anything else that I think in the top like 100 that is, again, I already kind of went over how Chestnut's super, super strong. But again, for this video, it is a Frenzy Plant user, so I'm not going to cover that. I'm looking at Abomasnow. I'm going to come back to Abomasnow. Let me just look at the top 100 to see if there's anything else that like pops out of my eyes. No, because a lot of these just have legacy moves. Again, Skunk Tank, I would just rather use Drapion, quite honestly. I don't care that Trailblaze got buffed. And then, yeah, these are just poor man's better options up there. Okay, let's talk Abomasnow. Because Abomasnow fits a very, very, very similar bill as Sandslash in the fact that so you have way more weaknesses as a grass ice. This has always been Abomasnow's weaknesses. It's very glassy and has a lot of weaknesses. As you can see here, double fire, weak to bug, fighting, flying, poison, rock, steel. So it's borderline unusable in the past couple seasons because of all these weaknesses, right? Although you hit super effective against flying yourself, there was a lot of flyers. Poison, not as many last season, but poison got buffed this season. There was a ton of fighters last season. There was even a good amount of bug last season between like all the charge bugs and Galvantulas and stuff like that. Bastion and Carbink as a rock type users, and then all the steel wing users, Empoleon and Skarmory, right? Got buffed. Skeldurge as the fire everywhere. So it was tough to use this Pokemon in the past. I do think with what got buffed and nerfed this season, I think these weaknesses resistance play better this season. Yes, poison got buffed, but flying got nerfed into the ground, and so did fighting. So a lot of those are down. And because there's so many, so what got buffed was ground, and because there's so many ground type Pokemon, you're seeing a lot less bug. Like I loved using Charge Bug before, but I'm not using Charge Bug as much anymore because Clodsire's on. 75% of the Pokemon teams that had a Pokemon on the Baltimore Regional had Clodsire, right? So it's tough to use something like Charge Bug now, which you would resist the electric anyways, but the bug would hit super effective. So I think that the buffs this season with like the ground type buff and, you know, Feraligatr not getting nerfed, I think that you have a lot more play this year as Abomasnow. Again, 111 defense, 143 stamina is not bad. Again, this is the non-shadow, so you have a little more play. Oh, the shadow's only ranked 2 higher, right? So there we go. Before it was like you always want to use the shadow, but this season looks like it doesn't matter as much. And what you get with this is that Powder Snow, same like A Sand Slash, Powder Snow is just going to hit super effective against so many things in this top meta, right? Powder Snow is going to beat a lot of this stuff. Plus, as a grass type Pokemon where Sand Slash is going to have a little bit of problems, you now also have coverage for Feraligatr and Azumarill to hit super effective against them and resist their water moves. So I think Abomasnow also has that sort of like sneaky play. It just comes down to like, you just got to think about this this is the way I kind of look at this. The meta is going to shape up the way it's going to shape up, and not surprising, you got Pokemon that are just like got buffed on this. Malamar, Clodsire, Gastrodon all got buffed. You got the Pokemon that did not get nerfed, kind of stayed, Feraligatr and Azumarill. And then you got Pokemon that have always been good at their niche. Like Dugong is still ranked like 60 something in here. But Dugong is always sort of criminally underrated in this meta. Given what it does, again, because look at its distribution. 1623 does not seem amazing, but again, you're not using it generally on the lead. You're using it as a safe swap. 1 Ice Shard, 16 and 23, 1 Ice Shard. You come in as a safe swap, you Ice Shard, you get ahead on energy. 24 and 15 record, and if you go 24 and 15 record in the rankings, I bet this thing jumps up to top 15, right? So that's why it's already sort of high. So you need to think like, okay, what is missing in this formula? I think grass has always been missing, and grass is starting to like, you already had Superior's kind of always been there. A lot more people trying to use Jump Bluff. You now have a lot more ground type Pokemon now. Flyers got nerfed, way less fighters. So like, where do you fit the bill? So I think things that are like weak to fighting that can also kind of cover a lot you're seeing in the top meta are strong. Hence, Dunsparce, Ace Hand Slash, Abomasnow, right? And that's kind of my thinking, and that like the way that the meta currently is now, those Pokemon should rise to the top as sort of like core breakers for what you're seeing in this meta. So those are just my first thoughts of sort of like accessible Pokemon that you can use. Again, like if you have a Clodsire or a Feraligatr, like these Pokemon are obviously strong. Like I don't need to like pretend that they're not, like, oh, you don't need to use these, you should just use like Pokemon that are ranked like 80. Like if you got these top Pokemon, for sure. But if you're a new person and you, Clodsire feels like it should be, what's the level on this thing? 26 to 34. I feel like Clodsire just, again, its stat product isn't staying with 209 stamina. It feels so tanky for a level 30 Pokemon. Like I feel it on Azumarill and stuff, but that's like a level 49 Pokemon. But Clodsire just obviously feels tanky. And then Mandibuzz is always tanky, low defense, low attack, super high defense and stamina. But that's not surprising. That's one of Mandibuzz's strengths. So, yeah, that's just my initial thoughts. If there's anything else that you think is like very, very underrated, let me know. I saw a couple Ursa-rings. And I have not used it, so I can't speak to it. It's always been so glassy. Yeah, 140 attack, 89 defense, 128 stamina. And if you use a shadow, that 89 defense goes down even more. So it probably cannot take any move at all. But Shadow Claw with a close combat, coming in quick and attack heavy, is a probably good Pokemon. But again, I'm not going to talk to that Pokemon because I've never used it. And again, if you go, I would go check out my overrated, underrated, because I already talked about core breakers. I already talked about Chestnut as a potential core breaker on some of these. So I go check that out. But again, if you're looking for just kind of budget options, those are my initial thoughts. Anyways, that is it. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next one.